Today we're looking at Creighton versus UConn, which occurred this past Tuesday. This is semi-remarkable because Baylor beat UConn by 20 or something along those lines. And this is UConn coming off of a tremendous game. We're going to discuss why it occurred and what it means for UConn and the rest of the season. Let's go. So the first thing I want to jump into real quick is what happened in the first meeting between these two and how that plays in today's game. So let's look at my review real quick. What do the clips I'm showing you have in common? They are all floaters, contested, semi-off balance. So a lot of them have gone in. That's accurate. However, you will not get as many points for them as you do with an open three or with an uncontested layup at the rim. Okay, and we're back. So we talked about the floaters that happened numerous times, and so why those occurred is I didn't talk about it as much in that it's because it's this aggressive drop coverage that Creighton runs, and so they put Kalkbrenner, who is guarding Klingon right here, all the way back to the paint, so he's literally just a rim protector, and so essentially allows the guards to stay home on everybody outside, and so that means that you have the outside covered and you have the inside covered, and so it leads to shots like this, which are floaters, which UConn made at the beginning, but then stopped making later in the game. So these are all from the first couple of possessions in the game. We can see again, Kalkbrenner's just chilling back there. He says, yep, shoot a little floater right there, no worries whatsoever. So I don't think the difference really was on offense for UConn. I think Creighton limited the cuts and the things that UConn does really well, pretty well in both games, frankly. Their defensive drop worked really well. I think the bigger difference is that Creighton had a markedly different showing on offense, which we're going to discuss. Again, we can see floaters, mid-range contested jumpers. UConn shot these all game. So let's go into what I said about the defense in the first game. The thing I want to establish right off the bat is UConn won this game with great defense. They forced Creighton into bad shots, turnovers, etc., just across the board. I mean, frankly, if you have 28 points with 10 minutes to go in the second half, you are struggling on offense, to say the least. Okay, and we're back, and we're looking at the first couple of possessions for UConn on defense in particular, and they actually started off defense really, really well. They were playing good defense, forcing ball handlers, forcing mistakes, and this is very reminiscent of what we saw in the last game, is the fact that Creighton wasn't able to penetrate, wasn't able to get good looks because UConn is playing such good defense. Active hands, forcing turnovers, leading transition. However, this stopped rather drastically after about maybe the first 6 minutes of the game. After that, Creighton was able to move the ball pretty well. They were able to get penetration. And I think a lot of it has to do with the Creighton guards. Shout out to them, they did well. But Klingon getting in foul trouble also caused issues. But here we can see just examples of slight guards getting caught on screens right here. And this is something that just didn't happen as much in the first game. That happened a lot more in this game. So combined with just a little bit of inaccuracy on UConn's defense, but then also the fact that Creighton just shot the ball so freaking well this game. It's every open three or semi-open three, they were getting great shots. And then when you start to see the threes go in, we see the back cuts like we saw in the last clip. Those also start to open up. This is kind of essentially what UConn was able to do Marquette. Creighton did a good job against UConn in Tuesday's game. This is an excellent example. They're using Kalkbrenner right here is essentially the threat. They're going to get him the ball in the middle, and so UConn's got to cheat over, and a nice skip pass to the corner here, and Creighton's got shooters spread all around the court, and so that's deadly if you get an open look like that. So one of the big differences, or I think probably the biggest difference, is in that first game, UConn won by 14, 62-48, and the biggest difference is Creighton shot 6 for 26, which is 23%. 23% is not going to win a whole lot of games. And then conversely, in this game, Creighton shot an astounding 50% on 28 threes, 14 for 28, and that is much more likely to win you, especially close games, and especially when it comes from people that haven't been making threes in the past. Zero hasn't made that many threes. I think 23 hasn't made that many threes too, and they both hit threes very well. In these kind of games, I'm always curious how the coaches react to the game and what they think in particular. So let's listen to what Dan Hurley said in the post press conference.
Yeah, I think they got a really good defensive scheme. I think there were opportunities for us to pull the trigger. Kalkbrenner, Ryan's a tough guy to finish at the rim. I don't know, we shot 44%, which on the road with how we defend would generally be, maybe good enough for us to be in the game.
And while this result doesn't look good for UConn, I still think it's not super bad. the fact that Dan Hurley has such a pragmatic approach to it and understands where the issues are and understands that like Creighton shot really well for the game, like that happens sometimes, and can adjust one way or the other. I think that bodes well for UConn, as I believe some of the comments said in the last video, that having somewhat of a wake-up call to make sure they're not complacent is really healthy, and I think this could be that for UConn 100%. I don't think they necessarily played poorly. I think Creighton played really well, and UConn had an off shooting night and Creighton had a good shooting night. And so sometimes this kind of thing happens when you have top level competition. If you enjoyed this and want to watch that first recap, I'll post it right here. If you want to like and subscribe, feel free to. But most importantly, have a great rest of your day. Bless.